Hello, welcome to Become the Change. My name's Sandy Levesque, and there's sorry about the confusion with the time. Oh, hi, we have
Hi.
Jane and Lisa Lotta. Do you guys want to say hello, or ladies rather?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. I just realized I had my sound turned off. I'm sorry, Lisa Lotta, if you were talking earlier, um, or Jane. I've just been talking right over you, probably. Oh, so So welcome to this hangout, and hi. We already have a hello, a comment, and a question. Well, not really a question from Bernd Kohl. So hi there, Bernd. We're good, thank you. This hangout is all about what I call conscious activism, about people who are helping to change the world, whether that's now or in the past. How we can get inspired by them, and also crucially, actually, how we can apply it to the internet because the people that you're seeing on this hangout, they actually work with me in a team where we build our online presence and the vision that we have for the changes in the world. So we all have different visions. You watching this, you probably have a different vision as well. But what I find so inspiring is when you look at the stories of people who've already done stuff in the world, it helps you to realize that you can do things too. And it gives you ideas and inspiration. In fact, researching today's topic, I have to tell you, I just got so inspired because I suddenly, it was almost like the spirit of the person we're going to be speaking about was here. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that sometimes when you connect to something that's happened or someone that's happened, and suddenly you get a glimpse into their universe, how they saw the world, and it opens up your own world. So that's really the intention of this hangout, is to help you see what can be possible for you. In fact, I'm just going to let you talk amongst yourselves for a second because I have to just sort something out with my dogs. I'll be back in 1 second. And if this looks like I'm in my bedroom, I actually am. I'm staying at a friend's house and I've come upstairs to not disturb them. So, hi,
Very lovely wallpaper. Hi.
yeah, I know.
Wow, what fun. It's like a set from Star Wars that was rejected, I think. Am I completely just a silhouette?
Yes,
Did I put the hood on? Did that make it better?
Darth Vader. You're Darth Vader. Yeah.
I'm your father. Didn't I see Liz Lutka on when I wasn't Liz Lutka on here? Chico.
So this is why we have a disturbance, because Chico Chico couldn't understand why he wasn't allowed to get in on the
Oh,
hangout.
of course he doesn't understand. He's like, girl, get me on camera.
I know. And now he's like turning his back to the camera.
He's a big
Too cool
tease.
for school. Oh.
Oh,
So
there we go.
oh, and we have Lisa Lotta.
I'm not a
We kind
silhouette
of do,
anymore.
but I think she must be having trouble with her connection because we're just seeing her lovely smile for now. Ah, there she is. Hey, Lisa, you can unmute yourself. Do you want to just say hello?
Or do Swedish Sign Language. That's fine too.
Yeah, Eva's good.
Sandy, I have a question for you real quick, Sandy.
Yeah.
Am I the only man on your team?
You're the only active man. I've had other guys sign up, but they sort of didn't stay consistent. So you're the go-getter guy.
Dudes don't know what they're missing.
Yeah. I know
Come on back, brothers.
there's plenty of room for more. It's
I
well
know.
that you're actually, there's two of you because there's Chico,
It's true.
who's a
And Chico,
boy.
and Chico's the Lion King, and
Yeah.
I'm Gollum.
Yeah. So so today we're going to be talking about Andrew Carnegie. I should actually say, oh, we have Candace as well. Oh, this is so cool.
Ooh, pretty cats.
Yeah, so we have the cats and the dogs. And if you're watching this, we are going to get to some useful stuff in a second, don't worry.
You might have to edit this before you release it again.
Yeah. But also I quite like these hangouts to be quite interactive, because when you work with other people, things are a lot more fun, and when you're having more fun, you tend to be more productive. You get, you start to create more traction. So the idea of there being a bunch of us here is that we can all kind of bounce off each other, and you're watching this, you're free to join in by asking questions. Use the Q&A, just click on the button on the video and let us know that you're here, and we'll answer any comments or questions that you have. Candice, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but
yeah.
We can't see you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, you are there. Oh, great. Hi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
I did that on purpose.
Oh, okay.
It will save us distraction.
Okay.
Are you wearing curlers or something? A mud mask?
Yeah, right. That's me.
I love the mystery.
Sorry, Jane and Lieselotte, if you go to the left-hand side of your screen, there's a little button that says Q&A, and if you click that, then you'll be able to see what people are writing. It'll be on your screen. Will be split.
Know that.
So you won't have to switch screens. It'll just be there. And
yeah.
Bernd Cole says hi there.
What
What's
do you
going
say?
on?
Yeah.
A whole lot of craziness, Bernd.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the side.
It's
download
the
the big blue Q&A.
Yeah. It downloaded it for me too, so it'll come up in a second. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Back to you, Sandy. Sorry to.
That's
take
okay.
over
No, thanks
like
for pointing that out. I thought anyone could see that, actually. I didn't realize that you had to click on it and download it. So just before we start, actually, I just realized today by doing research on Andrew Carnegie that most of us don't say his name right. And if you don't know who he is, he was. I'm going to share a bit about his story, and we're also going to be chipping in here. But he is just such an amazing man. He was an amazing man, because he started from literally nothing. He started out, his family was very poor in Scotland. His dad was actually a political organizer for working people's rights, a chartist they call it in Scotland. Back in the 1800s. And the funny thing is, when I used to hear people talk about, if I ever heard the words 1800 or last century, sometimes I think we mentally check out because it seems a little bit far away. But what I found, and I really credit this to Napoleon Hill in reading Think and Grow Rich, which is all about interviews with the world's most successful entrepreneurs, which has never been done since. So it's an amazing book. You realize that history can offer you so much, people's stories, what people achieved. And Andrew, his family moved to America when he was like 8 or something, and when he was 13, or when he was 12, and then when he was 13, he worked. He didn't go to school. He started working in a factory.
In America.
In America, in Pittsburgh, I think. And his family was very poor. You can see pictures of where he grew up in Scotland. It's this tiny little. It looks like a hobbit's house, very poor house. And he became, by the time he was 60, in fact a lot earlier than that, but he became the richest man on planet Earth at the turn of the century. Like in 1901, he sold his company that he'd built up as an entrepreneur for $400 million, which is about $5 billion today. Just the biggest business transaction that had ever taken place in the world to one person. And the fascinating thing about his story, and I'm going to give more details about it as we go through, is that he actually gave away most of that. I didn't quite realize actually until researching this just how much he gave away. He gave away about 350 million of it, and he wrote a lot about this. So I'm going to get you guys to sort of chip in a second. I just wanted to add that so most of us say, like, do any of you know how to properly pronounce his name, actually?
I know how. You know why? PBS television in the U.S. Because they always talk about the people that fund PBS, and they say the Carnegie Institute. Am I right?
Yeah, that's it.
They always talk about the Carnegie Institute.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, because most people say Carnegie, which is what I always used to say until this afternoon.
I've been
um,
saying that in my recordings of Think and Grow Rich, so
yeah.
oops, not going to go back and change it.
No. Well, the Scottish way is Carnegie.
Carnegie.
Yeah, Carnegie. And I watched a funny interview. They went to his hometown, Dunfermline in Scotland, and interviewed people and asked them, how do you say the word Carnegie? And they said one of them was a taxi driver, and he said, when I was growing up, my mum used to say whenever I asked her for something, who do you think I am? Andrew Carnegie? Whenever he wanted anything. And so I'm just interested to know, did any of you on the panel here, did you know much about him until recently, or until today even?
Only that he was a big-time philanthropist, and after he died, his work, 100 years later, is still carrying on. So that's about it, and that he was steel magnate. So
yeah. And
magnate,
lady? Magnate, I think, yeah. Candice, had you heard of him?
Yes, of course. So in the Midwest of the United States, especially Midwest, and East, outside especially of the big cities, he was providing funds for public libraries. And so libraries were built with his funds to a neoclassical look. They could be small, they weren't gigantic, but in smaller towns or small cities. And that was the seed of public library system all throughout the United States.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, actually, the reason that I decided to pick him for today's hangout was that, like, some of us were in Charlotte last weekend. Well, in fact, nearly all of us, Lisa, Lotta, Tracy, and Jane, for an event. And in Charlotte, there's actually a Carnegie Library, like Candice was just talking about, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library, and it's neoclassical too. So it's got like these huge columns outside, and it's right in the city center. And it was the first library the city ever had, which is a huge city. And what he would do is he would pay for the city to have the library on the condition that the town provided the upkeep of it, so that it would continue going. And he did that all over the world, like even in Fiji, Scotland. Scotland was the first one. Japan, like so many different places in England as well. And you might be wondering, well, why did he do that? And actually, that's one of the things that I picked out 4 things from his story that I thought we could look at, because they're things that really stood out when I was researching his whole life, and I'm actually reading his autobiography. And one of them was that he was a huge believer in reading. You know, he didn't go to school. His family wasn't particularly educated. He was really poor, like really working class. But what happened was that in his first job in that factory where he was like a bobbin boy, I don't even really know what that is, when you hold, you know, you help people that work the wool looms, I think. There was a guy there that would open up his library to all the boys that worked in the factory on Saturdays. And Andrew would go there with his friends and would read the whole day. And he said even when he was a teenager, he did stuff like start-up debating circles. And through his whole life, he actually belonged to loads of different societies. And he always said that he became a good speaker and could talk to anyone because he memorized whole chunks of books and quotes. And he would go like practice debating with his friends, and he said that the best way to become a good speaker was just to keep doing it. Like, not rocket science, but can you imagine like being as poor as that and still sort of you know, he never let himself be defined by where he started from, which is an amazing thing about his story, because if you can just sort of put yourself in his shoes, you know, you're working to support your family and your mum, literally giving away the money you earn to your family, not going to school, probably most boys that he worked with never really left that factory or didn't ever leave that work, that kind of status in society. And yet he went on to become this kind of Richard Branson before the actual Richard Branson. And so, did any of you guys, have you had any, do you want to share anything about reading, like how it's affected you at all?
When I was a kid, every summer they used to have a thing called the MS Readathon, Multiple Sclerosis Readathon, and my sister and I, she's 3 years older. I had older sisters and a brother, but just Amy and I would always do it. And what we had to do is we had to go door to door around the neighborhood and get people to sponsor us per book. So it was like 5 cents or 10 cents a book, and we had about 2 months to read. And I think every summer I usually read about 25 or 30 books. It was just nuts. I mean, I was reading a few grades up, probably 3 or 4 grades up, but I was just devouring books, and I'd either spend the entire weekend or half the week during the summer in the library. And yeah, libraries have always been so important to me, and I never knew the connection with Andrew Carnegie. I just assumed it was part of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't always know the story behind why there's these beautiful buildings, or but it was one guy that opened up his own library that made him realize, well, wow, these are really actually. He continued that habit his whole life. And actually, I just wanted to read something that he said about it, but my computer does weird things when we do Hangouts because it takes up a lot of the computer's power, I think.
It knows.
Did anybody else want to share something?
I just remember we had a library at home. My father, he was a teacher, and it was always a whole wall of books in the living room. So, and he was always taking us to the library. So I remember as a child the smell of the library, a rainy day when you went in there and you could choose all those books and went home and read. But I have lost a little bit of going to library here in Sweden now. I have become a little bit lazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, something interesting about him as well, actually, was that he also funded retirement funds for teachers, because when he became very rich and successful, he felt like, because he was such a big believer in young people getting education or reading, and not necessarily education of the traditional school kind, but he felt that, I'm just adding that because I know that from what he says to the author of Think and Grow Rich, but he actually funds, and it's still to this day, it's still active, a huge retirement fund for teachers in America, and apparently it's one of the biggest ones there is. I'm trying to get the page up, but my computer's still not working. He also did, oh yeah, here we go, because he was concerned that a lot of teachers lived in poverty, and yet he felt like they were really important, so they shouldn't be living in poverty. So it's called the TIA CREF. It's a leading retirement provider for people who work in the academic, research, medical, and cultural fields. So just to give a bit of his early story, because I find it really interesting how he actually, he was working in this factory, reading books on Saturdays, doing debates with his friends. But how did he go from that to becoming, this big industrialist? And what actually happened was that he kept getting promotions, and this is actually one of the other themes that I wanted to pick out, was that he always went a bit extra, like he went the extra mile. So he was doing this job as a looms boy. He eventually started doing admin work for one of the factory owners because they noticed that he worked well. And he filled in for someone one day when they were ill, and he did such a great job, they took him instead. And so in that job, he had to keep data in one single column or something on a notebook. as far as I understand. Andrew, if you're listening, and I'm butchering your story, I apologize, but this is what I've been reading. And what he did was that he found out that in other factories they were doing 2 different columns, and this was better. So he actually went off and trained himself with 2 of his friends, like in his spare time, in the weekends, to find out how to do this new system. And he went back to his job and said, well, look, I've found a better way of doing it, so I'll just do it like this. And the boss was so impressed that they ended up like introducing him to someone else. He eventually became a messenger boy and started taking messengers. And most people that were doing that, most boys at the time, they would just, they would literally bring the piece of paper or the telegram from person to person. And what Andrew did was he memorized the messages, and then he memorized all the different people that he was continuously taking them to, so that he started to go way quicker, because he would see people and he would know, like, who worked for who. So he would get the messages to people like half the time that other messenger boys did. So again, he caught people's attention and he was promoted. And he eventually began, this just gets better and better, because then by now he was working in like a railway place as a telegraph messenger, as I was saying. But then one day his boss was ill, and there'd been a big accident, and so the boss was away somewhere. And Andrew came in and saw that the trains, even though the accident had been fixed, no one was making the trains go because they were waiting for the boss to come back. And he said he got this weird feeling in his heart, and his heart started pounding, but he knew that he should just start doing the trains, like telling people, like being a train operator, because he knew how to do it. He'd watched his boss do it in between the messages. And so he actually did it, even though the boss wasn't there, and he was only 16 at the time. And when he came back, the boss, looked at him, and Andrew was expecting him to get really angry, but he was actually really impressed. And he from that day, Andrew took over the operation. Like, he didn't have the job really, the guy was still doing it, but he was the one that was doing most of it instead of doing the messengers. And eventually he became an operator, and then the chief operator for a whole district. And this is another crucial thing about his story, was that he obviously at this point trains were becoming more and more popular in America, and he was actually offered an investment opportunity to put money into the sleeper cars on the trains. And it was so funny. I mean, I'm not sure how you could get this today, but the investment was that you don't have to pay anything. You can pay me back with the dividends that you'll get from the investment. And so he obviously took the opportunity. And within 2 years, and again, I think this is quite important, because when you're like, late teens, early 20s, 2 years can seem like a really long time. But he was just happy to have this investment. But within 2 years, it was bringing in 3 times his salary as an operator. And so he reinvested that money into some kind of train company. And eventually he realized that because trains were expanding so quickly, they needed steel. So he began like finding out how to get steel brought into the people that make trains. I have no idea how all that works. But the funny thing is, and just feel free to chip in if you guys know anything or about his story. I have to admit, I didn't know any of this until I started reading his autobiography. But what happened was that he didn't know anything about how to make steel. Remember, this is a boy that started in a factory as a bobbin boy. But what he did was he built up really good friendships and partnerships. And this was the third thing that I noticed about his story, is that he found people that did know about steel, people that understood how to make it, how to organize the moving of it, how to market it, how to do all the different bits of a business. And he formed this mastermind. And Napoleon Hill talks a lot about that in Think and Grow Rich, a book that Andrew helped create in the world. But basically what I wanted to just bring from that was that even when he had created the company. It was starting to make a lot of money. Most people at that time, they had a structure where the CEO was like up here, and then you had people that had stock options, and then you had, you know, obviously workers. And what Andrew did was that he created a partnership because he wanted people to feel like they were involved in the business, and he also didn't think of himself as the one that knew everything. Like he really understood that it was because he'd found all these amazing men at that time that he was able to make the company work. So he had a partnership. He was obviously like the creator, the founder of it, but he like the legal structure of the business was a partnership. And he talks a lot about this in his book, that as he went through life, he was like, I don't know anything. So what I do is I find people that are really great at what they do. And this is actually what Richard Branson says a lot. It's really interesting if you ever read his books. He says exactly the same thing. And he's kind of a bit different because Andrew only ever did steel, really. Richard Branson, you know, we all know, he's done tons of stuff, going to space, Virgin Cola. But they both had this recognition that you can't really do everything alone. And I just think that's really beautiful, really apt. So, like, do you guys, any of you want to share anything that came to your mind as you were hearing about his story, or anything kind of relevant to that?
I can't really think of anything. I just want to hear you keep talking.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't want to like talk over anyone. So please do like just chip in if you. It doesn't have to be, you know, specifically what you know about Andrew Carnegie. Sometimes, you know, it makes you think of other entrepreneurs that you know, or other people you've heard of. And actually, you know, the reason that I even first heard of Andrew Carnegie, and this might be, I think this is probably true for you, Tracy, as well, was through reading the book Think and Grow Rich. Because by the time he was 35, in fact, Andrew wrote himself a letter when he was 35 saying that, oh no, when he was in his late 20s, saying that by the time he was 35, he was going to retire and devote the rest of his life to philanthropy. Philanthropy, I can never say that word. He actually didn't retire when he was 35. He retired when he was 64, I think. But he started giving a lot of money away before then. And one of the things that he was really passionate about was people having knowledge, because he felt like in everyday life that there just wasn't that much to inspire people to realize that they could do amazing things like he had done. And he was such a passionate believer in this that, you know, he donated millions and millions, in fact hundreds of millions, into libraries like Candice was talking about earlier. And he met a journalist who sparked he caught his attention at Napoleon Hill, who at that time, you know, some of you may never have heard of him, some of you may know him very well. He wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich, which was actually Andrew's idea, because Andrew kept, you know, he knew a lot of other entrepreneurs that were successful, and he also saw a lot of people that weren't successful, and obviously he had a lot of workers in his factories. And he was always asking himself, you know, what makes the difference between people that go beyond where they started from and people that just never do, people that stay in that same box. And so he met this journalist, and he had the idea of getting the journalist to interview all of his friends to find what the things that came up again and again were. You know, what made all these men successful. And I have to, unfortunately, as a feminist, I have to admit that at that time, most of his friends seemed to have been men. So he asked this journalist, and he actually had a clock watch behind his back as he asked him, because if he took too long to say yes, he was going to just take the offer away. But he asked Napoleon Hill, this young journalist who was also from a very poor background, but was starting to sort of make some good articles and be noticed. He asked him, look, if I give you my address book and a letter that you can show to anyone who asks for it, of recommendation, will you interview all these entrepreneurs and businessmen, business people, and find out what made them successful and write a book about it? You know, make a philosophy out of it. You know, you'll need to spend probably 20 years, 25 years doing this. And Napoleon Hill didn't even know what the word philosophy meant at that time, which is really funny, considering that the book has now been one of the biggest bestsellers of all time and is actually like one of the first personal development books. And so Napoleon started to give him reasons why he couldn't do it. He's, you know, how am I fund this? I don't have any money. How is this going to work? And he said that he had like 6 reasons in his head that why he couldn't do it. But by the time he'd said the third one, he just realized he had to shut up and say, yes, I'll do it. And so it was just before the timer went off in Andrew's hand. And that led to this book that has been used by people, you know, for over a century now, who are interested in how to change your circumstances if you didn't grow up in wealth or if you don't know how to create it. So, you know, he was an industrial guy, but he was a passionate believer in books and in reading and in, you know, never believing that you can't change things. In fact, I'll see if I can find the quote that I wanted to show you earlier, if the page is working.
While you're looking for that, I just wanted to add, it still seems strange to me that he asked Napoleon Hill to undertake this 25-year challenge without offering him any support other than a letter and some phone numbers. It just seems like, all right, this guy's a billionaire and he's asking this journalist, who obviously journalists even back then and still today don't make a lot of money, to do this. And if you read about Napoleon Hill over the years, when he was doing this, he had moments where he was like poor and broke and still pursuing this project along with other projects. Uh-oh, Sandy's frozen in a... Oh, there she is. Okay, You're frozen like the Joker for a second there. I'm just stunned that a so-called philanthropist wouldn't want to, you know, give Napoleon Hill a little more of a leg up. And one other point is, in Think and Grow Rich, there are so many of these successful people who are high school dropouts. It makes you think that there's something wrong with the public school system. Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, that's just 3. I know there's a few others, but I can't think of them offhand, who just didn't finish high school.
The Carnegie also was the originator of the Carnegie Institute of Technology. Also in Pittsburgh. Sorry, I'm echoing. I'm going back off.
Ah. I think I'm... Yeah, are you there, Candice? Or I thought I'd frozen, but... Oh, okay.
No, I was making an echo.
Ah.
Turned off. I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. He did, because he wanted to put philanthropy into education. He also actually built where the Hague is, or not the Hague, sorry, but where a huge building for peace in Europe, which is where the International Court of Justice is.
That's the Hague.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? I was just trying to get the name here. It was, yeah. Oh, and he also, in Dunfermline in Scotland, there's a huge park which, for most of its lifetime, you couldn't visit it if you weren't an aristocrat or rich. And he bought it and made it a public park so that anyone could go into it. And what actually happened was that, it's the Peace Palace. That was it. It is the Hague. You're right, Tracy. He actually, because one of the things that he was passionate about was world peace. he also created a corporation, or a foundation, sorry, to support peace initiatives. It's called the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So, you know, he did a lot of stuff. In fact, by the time he was 70, he was a bit tired of always having to decide where to put his money. So he created a corporation to help him choose where to go to put the money, which, you know, I thought was a great problem to have.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
I'll take that problem.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd love to know, actually, I think this is probably something that Andrew would ask you if he was here. What books have marked your lives? Like, you wizards here on the panel, like, would any of you like to share, you know, is there one book in particular that has made a lasting impression on you?
I'll go. I'm really always ready with these questions.
Yeah, Stacey.
The Power of the Subconscious Mind by, I can only remember the last name. I believe it's Johnson. And I used to carry that around with me from like age 14 and up. And it's similar to Think and Grow Rich. And it's a great read, and it has a lot of like specific things to do. And I know I've read that more than I've read Think and Grow Rich. So look it up, Power of the Subconscious Mind.
And what did you get out of it, Tracy, more than anything else?
Just the idea that you know, you can, or you do, think things into existence. That your subconscious mind is it's a lot stronger than you think. It's a lot stronger than your conscious mind. And unless you learn to control your subconscious mind, or at least feed it properly, you're going to be at the subconscious mind's will. You know, you're going to be doing what your subconscious wants, and instead of the other way around. So
yeah, cool. Thank you.
I'll look up the name. I'll look up the author, and I'll put it in the little chat thing on the side.
Ah, cool. Thank you. So it was called The Subconscious Mind by
Power of the Subconscious Mind.
The Power. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
Joseph.
I just want to come up. Sorry.
I just want to mention that I wasn't really. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, Jane.
Okay. I wasn't really a reader for probably the first 20 years of my life. And even in university, I really rarely read any of my books. I became more interested after I finished university. I became more interested in them because I didn't have to read them, so I wanted to read them. But I remember picking up Think and Grow Rich from a used bookstore over 25 years ago, and just I was drawn to it, and I started reading it, and I didn't finish it. So, and then I just gave it away. So it's really interesting, and I bought a lot of books like that were just. I bought books on metaphysics and quantum physics and things that I was just drawn to, but I never really actually read them. I just had a library of things. But it's interesting that it's coming back full circle now, and that there's this knowing in me that these books are my mentors and my guides, and that I require them. And the whole leaders are readers. So since like I'm 45 now, so I've started reading actually like after university, which was about 20 years ago. And I enjoy it so much, and I enjoy the information and the knowledge from those authors that I really didn't grow up with. You know, I didn't even know how to use a library, and this was even in university. I had no idea. I was like, you know, and so it's interesting that how things have changed, and I'm just inspired by everyone's Book of the Month Club and what they're reading, and it's like, ooh. So yeah, soaking it all up. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jane. And it just goes to show that it doesn't, you know, you can start a habit at any point, and that we don't have to, you know, you don't have to learn how to become a reader. You can just start reading. And I love the point you made about how the books are like your mentors. So I think that's exactly how Andrew felt. You know, that these books had helped him so much when he didn't have many people around him that were good mentors for him. So the books became like that, and that's what. And he said actually when the library I visited, it's very prominently displayed that like libraries are like a spring in the desert, is how he described it. And I
love it. That's exactly a big oasis where you can set your hammock and just like
exactly, because they show you like something that's possible beyond perhaps where you are, like your physical environment right now, and people's wisdom that they've had, you know, because we all have different wisdom, and I think it's really good to have information from loads of different sources. So
absolutely.
I kind of.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jane. No, sorry, go.
I just want to mention one of the books that has had a huge impact on me, and that I loved so much, was Cloud Atlas. And it's kind of it's written by the same people, or it's not written by. It's the movie was made by the same people that created The Matrix.
Oh wow! I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the Cloud Atlas is absolutely amazing, and it takes you out of reality and to what else is possible, and it's like, amazing.
Oh, I love that link. But The Matrix is, I think, my favorite film of all times.
Yeah, well, you'll love the Cloud Atlas. The book is absolutely amazing. Yeah.
I've got that on my iPad, and I feel like I've got so many books to read, like that I can just carry around now, that I don't read any of them right now. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm 30 minutes. What am I gonna do? And you know, I've got this 600-page book on really, really exciting SEO, social optimization, and it's like 600 pages, and it was written like 2 years ago, so it's still somewhat relevant. And I'm like, all right, I got to read 30 minutes a day on this, and then I'll be like super internet marketer. And I started in the morning, and then I'm back asleep in like 10 minutes. So maybe I need something like Cloud Atlas to get going. A point I was going to make before you start talking about that was I fear the day when the smell of libraries will only be available in like a spray bottle, you know? That'll be such a death to civilization when you can no longer just smell the paper and the low quality paper that kind of.
I don't think that will happen.
I don't think it will.
I hope not. But you know, now bigger chunks of the library are devoted to computers. You go into libraries and you've got an entire floor that's not what it used to be. It's just computers now. So we'll see. Maybe 100 years.
It's a marriage. Yeah.
We won't be around when it happens.
And if it's something that you it got me thinking, because I used to love going to libraries when I was a child. I was thinking, well, if that happened, I would use some of my wealth to help stop that happening. So we can all do that. I think that's what I love about Andrew, is that he didn't sort of just passively take things as they were. He's like, okay, this needs to be different. Let's build a peace center in the middle of the world in Holland, or let's build libraries because there wasn't any libraries before. He was that was like the start of them. So yeah, if that happens, we can do something about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually contact a perfumist and have that spray made. So you know, like you can buy new car smell, right?
As an entrepreneur,
why not buy like library/bookstore smell? That would be so awesome. So
spray this and you'll get the book by osmosis.
I have a friend, Jay knows her, Melanie Buckley. She says whenever she goes into a library or a bookstore, it triggers a response and she has to go poo. Completely random, but
okay.
You know.
Thanks for the visual, Tracy.
There we go.
Lisa Lotte, was there a book that you wanted to share that? Moving on here.
I'm gonna mute myself.
Was there was there a book that you wanted to share? Oh, maybe you're frozen.
I have
Maybe the Stieg Larsson set.
a lot of Swedish books, thank you.
Oh, okay. We can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me? God, you're...
Yes, we can now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you.
A lot here, and it's how you how you change your thinking, so you're not get trapped in this old ways, and you have to read them over and over. Then I've been reading.
She's singing.
I'm like that. I'm eating good.
Lisa Lotte, I'm afraid that we can't hear you very well. It's breaking up a lot.
Oh.
It might be the connection.
We could hear your parakeet, but we couldn't hear you.
Maybe if you try like.
You hear what?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just move on, and when your connection's working, then chime in, Lisa Lotte.
Move on. Move on.
Okay, Lisa Lotte, I think you need to log off and try logging back in again.
Yeah.
Sometimes that helps, weirdly. Very technical tip there. So just before we finish here, I'm sorry, we just really can't hear you. Something that I had said in the title, you know, if Andrew Carnegie was alive today, how would he build his online presence? You know, I'm sure he'd have people building it for him. But it struck me that he would be like a mixture between how Richard Branson does his online stuff, because he has a very upbeat, kind of light and motivational style. You know, like he blogs actually quite a lot, shares videos. He talks about things in Virgin. You know, even the downs of Virgin. He's quite open about things to an extent. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he doesn't tell us everything, but he does like to pay forwards what he has used that works. And but I also think that Andrew would be a bit like Gary Vaynerchuk. And if you're doing any sort of social media marketing or using the internet, Gary is a great person to follow, because he actually started out as a wine merchant. He had a wine shop in New York with his dad, and he used YouTube when it was starting out and started to do daily shows about wine, which became really popular and allowed him to sort of the shop went from being this little shop in Brooklyn, I think, to becoming this worldwide organization and turning Gary into this, you know, huge social media guru. But the reason I say that is because his style is very matter of fact. He's always giving a lot of value and information, and he just gives you the bare facts. He's very, you know, straight up, as Americans would say. And I just feel like him and Andrew would have a similar style. And when he wants something, he really goes for it, and he sort of dedicates his focus a lot. So I think if you're looking at, okay, you know, if you're looking at your social media marketing, you don't necessarily have to be like a guy, you know, like what I was just describing, like, yeah, I got to do this now. But you can, you know, a lot of what Gary shares is just is being yourself and speaking about things that people, in a way that people understand, not speaking like a business, for example, and sharing things in a way that people get, so that they actually understand what you're saying and that they can learn from what you're sharing every day. And I think that's what Andrew would be doing too, because he was always thinking of ways to get people to be able to change their situation and better themselves, no matter where they were. So I think that he'd have a hybrid of those two.
Do you think he would utilize media as much as Gary? I mean, I followed Gary since I used to watch Wine Library TV on all the podcasts. I've watched all 1,000 something of the podcasts, I think.
Wow. Okay.
And his set was just ridiculously simple. His spit bucket was like for wine tasting was a New York Jets helmet spit bucket. Hilarious. He would have these guests on there. He had Maynard, the lead singer of Tool. Like he started getting like guests that were like just like wine writers to start getting more and more important guests on his show, and I kind of watched his evolution to marketing guru. It was pretty nuts how it went, and it was so. If you watched him long enough, you became addicted to him. You know what I mean? He was like sort of like a Dave Wood type. Really, you just like you can't take your eyes off of him because you know what he's going to say is really gonna it's really going to be the truth. It's really going to matter. I don't know. I don't follow him as much anymore. He seems to have gone in a direction that doesn't interest me as much. I'm not so sure, but I don't know if Andrew Carnegie would really. Not to totally disagree with you. I think he would definitely latch on to all the technologies, but I don't know if he'd want to be the face.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think he'd have people doing things for him, but because he was such a big believer in libraries and like sharing knowledge, getting knowledge out there, I think he'd be really excited about things like, audiobooks and ebooks and how libraries have also transferred to computers now. You don't have to physically go to a building and get a book, that you can go on your computer and get an ebook or PDFs. So I think he'd want libraries to be around, but I think he'd just see it as a vehicle to get information out there that could help change things. So yeah, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you either. Does that make sense?
We're agreeing to agree.
Yeah. Liselotte, is your connection any better?
A little bit wobbly, I think. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's thunder.
Good.
I think it's better. And Candace is here. Yay!
Yeah.
We have visual. Hi, Candace.
Yeah, that was attractive. I don't know how to work this on this computer. I'm turning off the video.
Okay.
And now.
Liselotte, do you want to just finish what you were saying about the books? We couldn't catch any of it earlier.
And you couldn't catch anything. Can you hear me now then?
Yes, we can now.
No. You can. Yeah. I was saying that I was reading a lot of Swedish books. A lot of authors who are in the same subject as we are talking about, where you learn to change your mindset about business and money and everything like that. Yeah. And I love those books. And also I was thinking, what kind of books have I been reading? And I'm like an eater of books and I give them away. I'm not a collector. And I always forget the titles and the authors. I'm sorry. But I love to read books. And especially on this area. That was not a lot of them in my home. It's more other kind of stuff. So, yeah. That's what I like to share.
Cool, thank you. So they had an impact on you too.
I missed a little. I'm sorry. I had to change computers.
That's okay, Ken.
About libraries. Of course, you've heard me talk about libraries before. But I'm wondering now, what do you guys think? Do people use libraries more now because books are more expensive? You wouldn't buy lots and lots of books, but you might borrow them from the library. And even though you can get electronic books and so on, like Tracy was saying, you can't smell it and you can't taste it, and you maybe get tired of looking at a small screen. So are we experiencing now the beginning of a renaissance of library use, or is it becoming less?
Good point. Who would like to speak about that? I think, am I frozen?
I think
Oh,
here in Sweden, we have a long tradition of libraries, so I think they are keep going. I have heard there is a lot of people, right? They haven't seen this with the e-books and stuff like that, so it's a lot of visitors and people borrowing books in library in Sweden. I can talk to that.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I find it's interesting because I don't really tend to use libraries myself. I used to live in them as a child. I'd go every weekend, and you know, I remember like my mum. I couldn't believe how many books I was taking out. But now I can't be bothered. I'm almost too lazy to go to a physical library and get the books when I have a Kindle and I can put them on there. And because I travel, it's just easier not to have a lot of physical books with me. But at the same time, you know, if I have children, or I do believe that libraries are such a, you know, an important thing. And I have a lot of friends that use them who are more settled. Because they don't want to buy the books, or they don't like reading them on a tablet. So I don't think I think it goes through phases. I don't think it's going to go, because I'm surprised by the number of my friends that use physical libraries. You know, I haven't used them for years, but I have friends.
Do you read in French?
No, as much as I can avoid.
So that's one excuse for at least 3 years.
Yeah, that's true. I've been living in France, where I hadn't even thought of it like that. Yeah.
Same with me and Jane. You know, we've both been out of our home countries, and I don't know if you read Chinese very well, Jane, living in Thailand, or Korean, or French. Like, I haven't been able to go into a library in years. Every time I go to Colorado to my brother's, that's one of the first places I'll go. I'll dust off my bike in his garage, and I'll ride to the library and hang out for the day. Then I'll go to the brewery and do a tour. They're all related.
And what about you, Jane? Like, what do you think that, do you see libraries a lot where you are in Canada?
You know, like I've never frequented libraries myself, so I really don't have any opinion about that, or I haven't observed what the trend is. But we still have a library in our very small town. We still have a library, and I think I mean, they try to encourage the young children to just start developing a habit of going to the library, of being introduced to it, of being inspired by everything that's inside of a book when you open it, where it can take you. So yeah, it's still here. It's strong with the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And adults.
Oh, I have my library, or the head library, is 15 minutes from me. Walk. It's beautiful. I'm going to take a picture, put on Facebook.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it, is that most libraries that where I grew up, most of the libraries were just kind of ugly. They were just little squat,
This is beautiful.
two-level buildings. But you know, the one in Colorado near my brother's house is nice. The one that you saw in Charlotte, it looked nice from the inside. I'm not sure how the outside was, but I think that might make a difference. You know, if it's less imposing and more friendly, and not ugly like a North Korea, like a Korean apartment building or something, then people would want to go into them. You know?
Well, that's one reason that Andrew Carnegie designed, or had designed, the libraries in this neoclassical style, or federalist sort of style, to be inviting in a classical kind of sense, not a storefront, not some ugly.
No neon.
No neon. Of course, this was what 1900, so something that fit in at anywhere.
Yeah.
And there are amazing library buildings. The one in Seattle is extraordinary, and a lot of places are beautiful modern buildings. But having it in a classical kind of style it fits everywhere, like your little black dress.
I love that.
I don't leave home without it.
Right.
Yeah.
I just realized that my university, last year I was there, they converted the one library into the cafeteria, and then they took a parking lot and filled it in and made more of a classical style library. And when it was done, which was like, of course, 2 years after I graduated, so I didn't get to use it, it was one of the most gorgeous libraries I've ever been to, and it was like technologically way up front, and this is around 2000. So I think Andrew would have really liked that library.
Oh, and Candice, I'm interested to know, do you use your local library at all, or?
I do use it sometimes, and I have this bad habit of wanting to read books that are kind of technical in my field and so on. So I don't always find those things at my local library. And when I travel, I'm using the libraries actually as a destination. I go to libraries more when I'm traveling. And archives, because I'm using the materials there. And, for example, journals that I can't get here, but I'm not near a university library. If I would probably live in there. I used to work in libraries. My main working when I was in school was bookstores and libraries.
Live down in the boiler room with a little cot surrounded by books. It's my dream.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Be careful what you ask for, Tracy.
I was kidding. I was just joking.
A palace filled with an amazing library. That would be even better. And there are private libraries as well. In fact, that's a digression. It goes too far away, but there are some private libraries who are like private museums, keepers of important works, unique.
And you can look at the stuff. You can't just look through glass.
Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't, and that's too bad.
You have to be a researcher, PhD student or something.
And not even. Sometimes it's just, I have this, and I'm real proud of it, and it's a work of art, and you're not using it.
One of the great things about the libraries today, and I don't think Andrew Carnegie could have, not even today, I'm talking still 15 years ago, is how you get library systems. You get like 15 libraries, and they're all linked together on their computers, and you want a book and it's not there, and they say, oh, we'll come back tomorrow. We'll have it sent over from the Rockville Library to the Wheaton Library, and it'll be here for you. And I think Carnegie would have just, been
happy about
with
that.
Joy. Yeah.
Actually, I managed to find the quote that I was looking for earlier, which I'm really happy about because I really like it. It's just something he said in his biography, but basically he said, because actually what he's, to give you a bit of context, he's talking about how when he was working in a railway, like in railways, and before he had his own company, he had a job that was really stressful because he had to, at one point, create some kind of steam for the, I don't have any idea about the physics of this, but if he didn't do that, it could be very risky and the engine could burst. But he didn't tell anyone about how stressful he found it. He just did it. And he said this. He said, my hopes were high, and I looked every day for some change to take place. What it was to be, I knew not, but that it would come, I felt certain if I kept on. One day, the chance came. So I just thought that was a great way to finish, because he's basically saying, he didn't ever assume that things would just keep being the same. And I can really relate to that, because I've sometimes felt like that at points in my life. I'm one, I'm sure not the only one, whether you guys here or anyone watching him or in the future. If you keep that open mind like he did, you open the door to magical, crazy things happening. and for him it happened many, many times over. So I just thought that was a nice way to end. My hopes were high, and I looked every day for some change to take place. What it was to be, I knew not, but that it would come, I felt certain if I kept on. One day, the chance came. So
I think you should post that on Facebook.
Yeah, I will. I really like that. So do you guys want to add anything before we finish here?
I'll add my last thing. This is my calendar, and every year I keep a list of all the books I read, but I don't. And this is kind of OCD or whatever of me, but it goes back to 2005 when I started making this list. And every calendar I get, I start over at 2005, and I make the entire list all the way through again. And it lets me know, like, at the end of the year, like, you kind of get an idea of which way your reading and your interests are going. And also, it clearly tells me how bad 2013 was for reading, because it's like 4 books.
That's a great tip, Tracy.
So, my best year is like 26 books, and my worst year is like 2, 4. So I've been doing that. So I've been doing that 10 years now. And
wow.
My girlfriend thinks I'm crazy, because every time I get a new calendar, I'm like, okay, I gotta list all the books again. She goes, why don't you just look at last year's and then just start with this year's? I said, no, I need to have all the books in one place.
I like that, though. Keeping consciously aware of what you're reading. And yeah. Cool, thank you.
Like, one year is fiction, the next year will be like personal development, and the next year will be like anything, science and medicine and herbs and whatnot, and then I'll go back to fiction for a while. And it's like, it's really neat, if you look back on it, and you can see where your life is heading, or was.
Yeah, cool. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. So just to recap for people watching, you can keep a track of all the books that you read, and you can be OCD and write them out every year like Tracy, or I could imagine keeping I really like that, actually, because I don't do that. I don't keep a record of all the books I've read. We keep mental records, don't we? But it's nice sometimes to have it written out.
Oh, I also grade them. I also give them a grade. A plus, A minus. If I give it a bad grade, I say why. Like, I say Tom Clancy book. I gave it a C because it was based on a video game, and poor dialogue. Then I know never to read it again, or skip that author altogether. But that's more OCD tips for the OCD set.
Oh. All right. Well, does anybody else want to share anything before we finish? Thank you all for coming out here, and to everyone watching and watching this later on. Just to recap, the 4 things that we discussed today from Andrew Carnegie's story were the power of word, the power of reading, and finding that spring in the desert, and opening doors in your world to new information, new awarenesses, and new ideas that can help keep you inspired and realize that a change can come, like he was saying in that quote. We talked about the power of friendships and partnerships. This was something that Andrew did throughout his life, helped him to become, the biggest entrepreneur on the planet. And he also always went the extra mile. He always did a bit more than he had to. Before he was even an entrepreneur and he was working for people, he always looked for ways to do things better, and would, even if it cost him money or time, he would go and do that. And the final thing was, we kind of discussed it loosely throughout, like paying it forwards. He actually wrote a book called The Gospel of Wealth, and I'll post this in the group where you can go and look at it. There's actually, you can listen to him. I thought about playing it, but it's really bad equality, you can listen to him speaking. And he wrote a book called The Gospel of Wealth, where he talked about how he believed any millionaire or anyone who's accumulated wealth had like a moral obligation to pay it forward, to do things with it. And so he walked his talk, you know, gave away 3/4 of his fortune. And in fact, when he created this corporation to take care of his charity giving, when he was retired, I said earlier he was about 70, he was getting a bit tired by it all, but he still wanted to keep giving the money. He just put $135 million in one go into this foundation, which was just unheard of. You know, 135 million back in I think this was 1911. That would have been probably around $2 billion today, something like that. Maybe a bit less, but you know, a huge chunk of money. So he believed very strongly that if you had wealth, you know, you should look out into the world and look at how you can improve the world with it. And it's something I personally believe in too, is that, in fact, we need more people who can do that, who realize that money is unlimited, really, and can contribute to things they care about with that money. So that was the fourth thing. And I think there was one more, going above and beyond, the power of word, paying it forward, and friendships and partnerships. That was it. So I'll post some resources if you want to read more about him. There's a great website that I thank you, Tracy, for sharing in the group chat. It's the corporation that he created. They have a lot of information about him. I guarantee if you just spend 5 minutes looking through that, you'll be mega inspired afterwards. And I just want to also thank everyone for coming out. And just you know, some people might think it's a bit weird to get together and talk about stuff like this, but I think Andrew would approve, because he did stuff like this all the time, you know, face to face. But he created like little societies, and they would get together and talk about things. And I think, you know, if we had just turned on the TV, in fact, some people where I'm staying are watching the news right now. You know, you can fill your mind with the stories of amazing change makers, and the inspiration that gives people, or you can fill it with the stuff that's going on in our world every day right now, and not all of it is great stuff. So you know, give yourself a pat on the back for being here. And if you're not part of our team and you would like to be, then get in touch with whoever brought you here, you know, whether that was one of these guys here or myself, and we can give you more information about how to do that. We use the internet to help share our message, and also to be able to have a business that doesn't take up, you know, 80 hours a week. You know, Andrew might not approve of that. He was a huge workaholic. But I personally believe you can take care of your body and yourself and still do amazing work. So any final thoughts before we close it up? Oh, and we can see Candace. Yay!
Yay!
Hey, feels like we have to say hello properly when we can physically see you.
I know Candace is hiding words of wisdom. She's holding back. Candace,
No, I'm holding my phone.
You're so you've had everything you've said is so brilliant, and it's not like crazy off the cuff weirdo stuff that I've been talking about. And I think you should close this out with just the words.
Oh, no pressure. No pressure. Yeah, I'm thinking of Carnegie's famous book. It became almost a joke in a way, because how to win friends and influence people.
That was Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie, oh, you're right. And what relation was he?
Let's call him nephew. That sounds good.
Okay.
He wasn't actually. I don't know if he actually he changed his name to be spelled the same way as Andrew. It's actually a lot of people. I used to think that they were related as well.
I forgot
But
about
he
that.
changed his
Okay.
name so that it would sound like Carnegie, but his was spelled Carnegie.
Well, there's my closing words of wisdom. It's okay to be completely wrong. And
I love it. Yeah, exactly.
but the idea of creating friendships and creating colleagues and collegial relationships carries over between these two things, between what Andrew was doing with his businesses and supporting teachers and education and reading and all of that, and these other thoughts, how we influence the world by who we are, what we do, and how we teach and share with others.
Beautiful. That's perfect to finish. Thank you, Candice.
Thank you, Candice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for organizing this.
You're welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And can you just repeat that last? I just wanted to say it again, but the last line you just said, Candice.
It's there in the ether. You'll have to look for it.
Oh, it was so good. I wanted to just repeat it to be the last words, but then it's flown in and it's all jumbled up in my mind now. But the words that we share can change our world and change the world is what I understood. So I think Andrew would be in approval. Excellent. So have a great day or great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to see you all again.
Cheers.
Yeah. And see you next week.
See you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
She's gone. I'm the only one left. Oh, you're here. Jane's here.
How do I turn this off?
Sandy left. There's a little red phone. When you click the red phone, it either sends off a nuclear weapon or it hangs up. Take a chance. Good luck.
Oh, bye.
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 Bye, Candice.
Bye-bye.